Hello and welcome to a very quick overview on how to install the NAPLAN app on a Windows PC and why you should avoid spending valuable budget on devices that only offer support for web-based browsing and online testing. Today we have Justin from Microsoft who's going to walk us through the NAPLAN Online install process. Now this is specific to you if you're a BYO school, a school that has devices prepared by an IT department, or a school that has a class set of devices ready to go when NAPLAN goes live. Now if you're thinking of investing in devices for NAPLAN Online, I'll be here to show you some fantastic entry-level devices ranging from as little as $380. These devices will do much more than run just an online test. They'll enable your school to run programs like Minecraft, develop and create 3D objects, and improve and drive STEM-based learning.
We're here to support you and we'll be online to take some questions, so please make sure that you do ask some.
Now before we get started, let's quickly review the minimum technology requirements required to run NAPLAN Online. With Windows devices, Microsoft recommends using a physical keyboard with a 10-inch display or larger.
Now please keep in mind that you do not have to purchase anything new to run NAPLAN Online on a Windows PC if you choose not to.
I'm going to take you through some fantastic low-cost devices ranging from as little as $380. Not only will these run NAPLAN Online securely, they also offer the opportunity to enhance everyday learning in your classroom. Any of these devices pictured on screen would make a great addition to your classroom, with the Infinity One from One Education starting from as little as $380. They're full-featured Windows devices, completely equipped for future-ready learning while offering enough power to run full applications. Your students can code and create new worlds using Minecraft Education Edition, as well as design and prototype 3D objects using Paint 3D. They offer the ability to create, share and collaborate in real time with Office 365 for Education, which is free for eligible students and teachers in Australia. And finally, they are ready for STEM-based learning. These devices offer a range of multimedia inputs that support connectivity to robots, printers, microscopes, cameras and much more. So when you're looking at suitable devices to purchase for NAPLAN Online, it's important to select one that does more than just take an online test. Select a device that enables your students' full potential, while also enhancing the potential for improved learning and teaching outcomes within your classroom. And it's also worth taking note that a BYO machine will run NAPLAN Online, however we'd recommend that these devices are tested thoroughly before deployment.
Everyone, we're online now to answer your questions related to devices or deployment. Please make sure you have a look at the information available on the Akara website and also the resources related to the devices that Ryan's just spoken about.
Now that's enough from me. I'm going to pass it over to Justin, who's going to take us through the NAPLAN install process step by step for a Windows PC.
The NAPLAN Online client is a lockdown browser that's designed for your students to be able to complete the NAPLAN Online exam. There are 4 key ways that you can deploy the NAPLAN Online client to your Windows devices, and it's important that you choose the method that's best suited to your environment. It's easy to understand the version of Windows that you're running, however you also need to understand whether WPad is being used in your school. WPad stands for the Web Proxy Auto Discovery Protocol, and it's technology that allows your browser to be automatically configured, enabling it to connect to the internet. If you don't think that you're using the technology, chances are you're not using it, because we typically see it in the larger jurisdictions like the state departments.
In this scenario, what we're going to do, we're just going to take you through the manual installation process. Now this process might be relevant for small schools that don't have any management platform, or particularly for BYO where you just want to instruct your users how to, or your students how to actually go and download the client and install it onto their local machine. So the first thing we need to do is just visit the Akara website, scroll down to the available installation options, choose your operating system, and whether or not your school is using WPad. Most cases you won't be using WPad. That's typically seen in larger departments. So let's download that client. We've already gone ahead and done that on our Windows 10 machine, and we've saved it onto the desktop here. So it's as simple as just double clicking on that download. It'll bring up the installation process. We accept the terms and conditions. Click install, and it's going to run us through a silent installation of the NAPLAN Online client. You will see an icon appear on the desktop and also here in the start menu. Once the installation is complete, we can click finish, and then we're able to go ahead and launch the browser. So in this scenario, what we're going to do is we're going to use Active Directory and Group Policy to deploy the NAPLAN Online client to your machines. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind: that this will only work for machines that are joined to your domain because they need to have policy applied. So the first thing you need to do is go to the Acara website and download the version of the NAPLAN Online client that is relevant for you. Pick your operating system version and whether or not you require WPad. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Most people will use the installation version without WPad. So download that to your local machine. Now I'm going to take you through the first steps of setting up the group policy. So we're in the group policy management console, and expand out your domain. Here in this example, we've set up an OU for NAPLAN computers, but you might set that up for all your computers, or you might have an existing OU that contains all of your computers that you want to make sure that the client gets deployed to. So I'm going to pick that. We've got some machines in that. I'm going to first of all create a new group policy object and link it to this particular OU. I'm going to call it the NAPLAN client install, but call it whatever you want. Use an existing OU if you've got one that you'd prefer to use. Now we're going to go into edit that policy. Now we're pushing the client to a computer, so that's important. Under policy, select software settings and then software installation. Right click, new, and we'll set up a new package. And here's where we're actually browsing to a copy of the MSI, which is the NAP Lockdown Browser MSI. Now, one thing that's really important here is it firstly needs to be stored in a share, and you need to make sure that both the share and the folder that the share is tied to has permissions for computers to get access to that install. If you don't do that, the installation process will fail. So really important and easy to overlook. Make sure you grant the permissions for computers, whether it's domain computers or everyone, to be able to read that location. So I'm going to select that MSI now. I'm going to say assign because I want that to automatically install to every machine that have that policy applied. Click OK. And it's as simple as that. The NAPLAN client is now set up and ready to be deployed to any computer that exists within that OU. So what we're going to do, I'm going to jump across to a Windows 10 machine that I've got here that sits within that OU. I'm going to simplify the process here. Because it's new, I'm going to go and force a group policy update, but you could just as easily do that by waiting a little bit and then rebooting each of those machines, because the policy will get applied at startup. So I'm going to run gp update /force on this example. It's going to go and have a look at all the policies that are available, and then it's going to come back with an update. Okay, it's just looking at the policy at the moment, and now it's asking me that if I want to restart, and that's because it's detected that it actually needs a restart. So we're going to allow that to happen. I'm going to select yes, and then we'll reboot. It's going to sign me out, and we'll wait for that to restart. Okay, so we're signing back into the machine now after it's restarted, and you can see here that the NAP Lockdown Browser has now installed. If you want to have a look at the actual installation process in this example, it's as simple as loading up the event viewer, and we'll jump into our Windows logs and our system log, and then in here you'll actually see the details about the installation process. And then from there you can identify if there was any challenges as part of that installation. So I'll flow down into the application management piece, and here you can see where the installation was successful. So again, another option for you to go ahead and perform the installation of the NAPLAN Online client reasonably easily, leveraging your existing investments in the technology that you have.
So some schools, and certainly most of those managed by the state departments, are going to use System Center Configuration Manager to deploy the NAPLAN Online client to their devices. Now it's important that you note that it's only devices that have the SCCM client installed. So in most instances, this is only going to be devices that are owned and managed by the schools or the department themselves, so that excludes BYO. Now, if SCCM is deployed in your school environment, it can be used to target the correct install to the right version of Windows based on your configuration.
So now we're going to take you through the installation of the NAPLAN Online client using System Center Configuration Manager. The first thing you need to do is obviously go to the Acara website and download the versions of the browser that are relevant for you. So by scrolling down, you can see there's different versions for different operating systems, and if you have WPad or not. Most common scenario is that you wouldn't have WPad unless you're with a larger department, but you would know if you needed that or not. So let's jump into the Config Manager environment. We've already gone ahead and downloaded the version of the lockdown browser that we need for Windows 10. And we're going to use that to perform the installation. Now most school or departments or Catholic dioceses would already have Config Manager installed if that's relevant for your network. So you should have the relevant systems already configured. So we've gone ahead and we've set up a collection of devices for NAPLAN. And in this scenario we're doing it simply based on the fact that the machine is running Windows 10, and you can see we've got a couple of members in there. So let's go and actually set up the application for distribution. So I'll come into Applications, I'm going to create an application. Now I'll go and search for the installation location of where that software resides. Put it in install, and it'll go and have a look at that actual MSI and import the information that's relevant to that. So I'm going to change the name of this to the NAPLAN Online Client. You can see we've got just the default quiet switch, which is the /Q on the end of the installation. Now that's just going to deliver a quiet installation, which is completely fine for the lockdown browser. If you want to put some additional details about the installation process, that's fine as well. Install behavior, install for system, so that means that it's available for all users on the machine and installed in the system context. We'll go ahead and work through that wizard and finalize the installation. Now let's go and actually have a look at the properties. And there's a number of things you can configure, including the icon if you like. You could change the icon so that it's got an icon related to NAPLAN. We're going to leave that at default for the moment, but that's completely up to you whether you want to change that. I'm going to just change my distribution settings so that the content is delivered to the distribution points ahead of time. And now I'm going to go ahead and create the deployment so that we can target the installation of the NAPLAN Online Client to that NAPLAN collection of machines that we had set up. So we'll click on Deploy. You can see the software's there. Let's target the installation at a device collection, so it's for all devices that we've got sitting in the NAPLAN machines. Now the content, at the moment we don't have that content sitting on any distribution points, so I'm going to go and target a distribution point, which will be the on-premises distribution point in this example. Now, when you go and push a software package to a machine, you can choose the deployment type. In most cases, you would say required, and when you do required, it's going to ask you when you actually want to push that installation to those machines. For the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to say available so that I can show you the application being available in the console ready for install. But if you select required, obviously there's zero touch from the user then. It's a far more seamless process. We'll just skip through the rest of the wizard because there's settings that can remain as default. And now we've set up the installation to be targeted at a collection of machines. So under my deployments, we can see the NAPLAN Online client will be targeted at the NAPLAN machines, and we'll be able to go ahead and install that. So let's switch across to our Windows 10 machine and go and have a look at the installation process. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Software Center, which is where packages that are marked as available are presented to the users. Now, if we had set that required, you would see a little balloon pop up down in the system tray down the bottom here, and it would talk us through the process as it goes and installs. But in this example, we're just going to manually do that. So let's jump into the Software Center. It's going to connect back to the Config Manager environment, and you can see the NAPLAN Online client that we set up. I'm going to go ahead and install that. It's going to talk to Config Manager, it's going to pull the software down to my local machine, and it's going to run the installation. You can see as part of that, it now has changed the status to installed, and the lockdown browser is sitting here on my desktop and also available for me through my Start menu. So what we've been able to demonstrate here is that we've gone to the Acara website, downloaded the client, we've set up the application and the necessary deployment in Config Manager, and we've pushed it to a machine in a matter of 5 minutes. And you can absolutely target that NAPLAN client to hundreds of machines expecting the same performance. So the reality is, within 30 minutes you should have the NAPLAN client ready for delivery through Config Manager and distributed to your machines within your environment.
Now finally, the fourth option is to use a mobile device management technology like Microsoft Intune to be able to automatically deploy the client to managed end user devices.
So Intune for Education is actually a customized portal that's simplified and suited for schools to run. As an Intune for Education customer, you actually have access to the full Intune portal as well for more advanced operations. So after you successfully set up the trial, you'll be landed onto this page, and this will send you down the path of doing an express configuration, or if you know what you're doing already, using the options on the left of the screen to get started. Now, I said that step one was setting up automatic enrollment into Intune. And because I've just started a new demo environment, this is already done. But if you need to check and make sure your environment is already configured, then what you want to do is go to the full Azure Active Directory portal. And this can be found at portal.azure.com. Once you're in the Azure portal, if you go to Azure Active Directory, and then head to Mobility, MDM and MAM, and then Microsoft Intune, you can see under MDM User Scope, we have all selected. Step 2, set up app deployment with Intune. In this step, let's go through the express configuration for the smoothest onboarding experience. I'm going to hit Launch Express Configuration, and I'm going to get started. Now there are a couple of ways to get your user accounts or your student accounts into Intune for Education. One way is through a school data sync program, or through a tool called Azure Active Directory Connect, which is responsible for syncing all of your user accounts from the on-premises Active Directory environment into Azure Active Directory. For now, I'm going to assume that our students are already synced through one of those tools, and I'm going to continue to set up Intune for Education. Here I get a choice of groups that I can configure. I can sync these groups through from Active Directory, but in this case, for simplicity, I'm going to say that this is for all users. Now I get a choice of applications that I want to install. Now I get a choice of settings or recommended settings for student devices. You can see that there's some basic device settings around blocking removable media, There's some Microsoft Edge recommended settings, wireless settings, application settings, and sign-in settings. These are all customizable in the console. After reviewing my configuration, I can hit Save, which sets up my tenant with a basic configuration. After that, I can go ahead and create more groups and target specific policy or apps that I need. Now, to show how to set up the Manage browser, I'm going to go to Apps, and I'm going to add a new desktop app. You can see I'm prompted to install a MSI file. Now, I'm going to go ahead and download that from the NAP website. You can see I can download an MSI that's usable for Windows 10. Now that the browser is downloaded, I can add it. You can see I get a choice of MSI command line options. In this case, I'm going to put /Q for quiet. I can put some publisher information, and I can select an icon. I'm going to upload a screen grab I got earlier. Now all I have to do is hit Save, and the app will be uploaded and ready for assignment. With the NAP Lockdown browser uploaded, it's now time to think about deployment. So we do that through groups. And you can see here, if I switch across to the groups blade, I get to change these group assignments, and you'll see a couple of options that come out of the box. We've got all devices and all users. Now, if you're using School Data Sync or Azure Active Directory Connect to sync through your Active Directory groups, then you're going to have a lot more in there. The other thing that you can do is create your own dynamic groups, and these can be really helpful when you consider perhaps the names of PCs. Maybe you want to group all of those devices together, like all the ones that start with NAP are shared NAP devices. So let's flick across to the groups blade, and I'm going to create a group. I'm going to make a dynamic group and call this NAP shared devices. Now these devices are going to be anything that starts with, their computer name starts with NAP. And this is going to be useful for any shared devices that aren't really associated with any particular student, but I want them to group together, and I want to target them all with that NAP Lockdown browser app. So now that I've created my group, I can go ahead and assign it an app. So the app that I'm going to assign is the NAP Lockdown browser. Done. Now, for the Lockdown browser, I still want my students that use BYOD to get this app when they enroll. Now, I'm also going to assign this application to the All Users group. And this is going to help pick up all of those BYOD students that just connect their own devices to Intune and make sure that they're using their Azure Active Directory credentials or their school credentials to connect and pull down that application. So now that that's done, it's on to the next step. Okay, so I'll kick off this demo in the Microsoft Store. All you have to do as an IT admin is find the Setup School PCs app by searching the store, and you can see I've already installed it, so I'll just launch it straight out of here. So when it launches, it gives you instructions on the 3 simple steps. So you've got to create a provisioning package, save it to a USB, and then run it on a device as it's booting up. So let's get started. Now, the first thing that you're going to be asked for is a sign-in. And now this is a pretty important piece that you need to configure, because this is something you sign in with a administrator for your tenant, and what this does is create a special token on the USB device that will actually allow that device to enroll into Azure Active Directory, which is a really important piece in this school learn scenario. So I'm going to enter my admin credentials here. Okay, it'll verify the account, and on the first run of this, it'll actually ask for some permissions as well. Okay, part 1 done. The next piece is if you want these devices to automatically connect to a Wi-Fi network, then you need to set this bit up. If you're planning on plugging them into the Ethernet port, you don't need to worry about this. So it's important when you're running Set Up School PCs app to be running on the same network as the devices that are going to connect. Done. So the next piece is around what I want the devices to be called. What should their computer name be? Now the important piece here is because I've already set up a dynamic group, I'm going to make sure that they all start with NAP, and this way they're going to all be grouped together. Now I get some configuration options as well, depending on what I want these PCs to be used for. So the first thing I can do is remove any pre-installed applications, so any bloatware that came straight from the OEM, you can have it during this first boot process actually refresh the machine and get rid of all of that junk. You can also allow or disallow access to local storage. So I'm going to leave this as disallow because these are testing devices. There shouldn't be anything need to be stored on them. I can have the option to optimize for a single student, which would give, once again, not for this use case, but would be useful in a single student use case where I want to allow them to have access to all of the storage on the device. I can let guests sign in, and I'm going to use that as well as an option for this computer. I can also choose to allow Windows automatic redeployment, which lets me, from the lock screen, pretty much factory reset the device and then use it for something else. Just a note on that it needs to be Windows version 1709. The next thing I'm going to do is set a specific lock screen for these devices. I'm setting them up just for taking NAP tests, so I'm just going to use the NAPLAN logo. The next piece is around something called Take a Test, which is a feature built into Windows 10 to make things like this scenario easier. However, NAPLAN uses an app rather than the built-in Windows feature, so I don't need to configure anything for this right now. The next step lets me add some applications directly into the provisioning package. So anything you add here will add to the size of that package that goes on the USB stick. In this scenario, I don't need to do anything with this. Okay, once you review your package, you'll be able to accept. And then once you've got a USB stick inserted, you'll be able to save the package directly to it. I'm just going to replace the one I've already got there. Cool, all done. If I had another 20 schools that I wanted to deploy to, I could add 20 different USBs and repeat that process over and hand one out to each school. Right now I'm just going to hit next, and it gives me a few instructions on what I have to do on the devices that I'm going to set up. So starting in the out-of-box experience, the first thing you'll notice is that if you've got that USB stick installed into the computer, it'll automatically pick up that provisioning package and start installing it. Okay, so it's copied the provisioning package over, so it's now giving you a message saying that you can get rid of it. You can take it out and go plug it into another PC and start off the process. And now we can leave it to go through and apply all the configurations. It's going to reboot a few times. Okay, it's rebooted. It's going to finish installing OneDrive and Sway. Okay, it's complete. So now you'll notice the background there, the lock screen background is the customized one that I configured. and now I'll be able to log on with a student account. Okay, so this is creating a profile for student on the device. So it'll just take a moment to prepare Windows for the first time. There we go. A few minutes later, you'll see the NAPLAN Lockdown browser gets installed by Intune.
Thanks for listening today. And we're online now to answer any of the questions that you might have about deployment or devices. NAPLAN Online is extremely straightforward on a Windows PC, and the important thing here is you've got choice when it comes to the way that you'd like to deploy it.